especially in redraft, I like having kickers. Now I know that the trend in most of fantasy football, redraft and in dynasty, a lot of managers are starting to like going away from having a kicker position on your roster. And I have a big reason that I want a kicker slot on my roster, but I want both of your guys' thoughts on if you still value the kicking position or if you're in the new age group where you're done with kickers, you're done with the flukiness.
I absolutely value a kicker. I think that if you have a player that can score points, I feel like it should definitely transition into points for fantasy. I think that the kicker gets shit on a lot for obvious reasons because of the fact that there's not really like you could rank kickers before the year and then it can completely reverse itself and there's no science, I guess, behind it. I mean, if you're a high-scoring team, yeah, you can kind of, bank on the extra points or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, you never know when a kicker's going to get called on. But that's, to me, part of the fun of fantasy is the curveballs, Like, if it was cut and dry, then everybody would have perfect teams, and that would be it, and we'd all tie. But I think that a kicker, as it is an essential piece of an actual football game, especially when it comes to scoring, I think it should absolutely be essential in fantasy. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, whatever.
All right, Paul?
So you find that randomness that sometimes kickers bring as a form of, it keeps you on your heels, kind of.
I find it exhilarating, Paul.
So to me, the point of trying to win in fantasy sports is to try to mitigate the variables as much as possible, right? That's kind of our goal week in and week out. As far as fantasy purposes go, I hate kickers. That being said, I like the kicker position because it gives me roster flexibility. I know Christian's more of a pro at this, but I have in multiple weeks just punted the kicker position entirely just to keep a guy on my roster.
Another positive for them. But what's crazy, and this is another reason that it's flip turn, another reason that I kind of appreciate the kicker position, because if they mess up for you in your fantasy league, chances are they lose their real job. So there's a sense of power for me where I'm like, that's it, buddy. You're done. Cut the guy, and then the real team cuts the guy, and it's like, that'll show you.
Well, it's especially true, and I think all three of us follow this philosophy when drafting a redraft league. I think all of us take our kickers very last round.
If at all.
I would rather fill my bench than take a kicker.
I care too much about grades.
Well, that's
just like high school.
So I take my kicker in the very last round as it is. So I'm not going to get a Justin Tucker or a Greg Zuerlein. What I will do is I will pick a kicker, and then if I do see one of those elite guys dropped down the road because roster flexibility, who's going to keep a kicker when you're trying to pick up a new starting running back of a team?
Yeah, I mean, look at the best kickers of last year. I know Tampa Bay had a really good, what was it, Guy, right?
Was it Matt Gay?
Matt Gay. I'm thinking of the kicker, or the punter, the Hall of Fame punter. Ray Guy. 6 letters, one name. Anyways, so you can never guess who the guy is going to be. I know, Carolina's kicker was also amazing this past year. So, I mean, I love when a kicker wins me a game. Because it's chance. And too many people don't realize that a lot of fantasy football is exactly that, chance. You take if I could predict and tell you every player that's gonna be the best at their position for a year, well then I should never lose, and then it's not fun. So when you can leave certain things up to chance, I think that it definitely makes it a little more satisfying if you take one of those random kickers like we saw this past year. So I love the kicker. I am for it. Brandon, for the people.
See, what I like to do is, as I already said, I will take my kicker the very last pick of the draft. And as the season goes on, I will notice that when I'm making my waiver claims on a Tuesday, I would rather drop my kicker than drop either a handcuff or a running back that's one injury away from a 3-down roll. I'd much rather drop my kicker and then pick one up on Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon. I want to see how my roster looks by the time game day comes around, because a lot of things can change between Tuesday waiver day and kickoff on Sunday. So what I will do, let's say that Dalvin Cook twists an ankle, the week that I'm making these waiver claims. Let's say it's week 3, week 4, whatever. Dalvin Cook twists an ankle and he's questionable to play the next week.
Happens all the time.
Let's say that I've claimed Alexander Madison. I drop my kicker, pick up Madison. Let's say
And then you just wait.
And then I just wait. I will wait to see if Cook is going to play, and if he does, Madison can go back to the waiver wire.
Yeah.
And I can pick up the kicker in his spot. I'd much rather drop my kicker and wait on that running back situation than drop somebody on my bench that I like that I'm pretty sure would be claimed by one of the lesser teams in the league.
So, at any point, do you leave the kicker roster spot empty because... So I've seen this before, and that's why I'm curious. Do you leave that kicker roster spot empty at times because there's literally no one else that you can let go? And you're like, if I let this guy go, then I lose the chance at him next week when blah, blah, blah. So is there ever a chance that you leave the kicker roster spot open completely?
There have been times where I've waited to see who's playing on Monday night, and if their kicker is available on the waiver wires, I will wait to make that drop on Saturday or Sunday. And then if I do happen to need those points when the Sunday games are over, in some leagues you can drop the last spot on your bench. Now, ESPN leagues don't let you do this. Once the game is started, the bench spots lock and you can't drop them. But if you're in Yahoo, you can drop your bench spots because they're not active on your roster.
Right.
So you have to know how the league hosting site operates when it comes to bench spots. Now, if I'm in like our Yahoo league, I will gladly leave that kicker spot open. And if I'm up by, let's say, 30 points before Monday night, and I'm like, you know what? I don't need a kicker this week. The guy I'm playing is done. I can wait until the next week to address the kicker instead of reaching for points that I don't really need and dropping someone that I might regret dropping later on.
Makes sense. What about you, Paul?
I'd say at least once per year that happens where I punt the kicker position entirely. I mean, you need sometimes the spots are more, and you're in a position where hopefully your team is in a good enough spot where you have your guys who you know are going to score points, and you can survive going that week without a kicker. Especially if you're like me and you stream your kickers week to week anyways, and it's kind of just almost a coin flip. Then yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable punting the kicker position, and if I'm comfortable enough punting it, then I'm in a position where I think I can win, and I usually do in those situations.
Usually do.